powering through our rickety old man bones to present to you the very finest in podcast technology. It's Voyager, please. A hateful voyage to the Delta Quadrant. My name is Joseph.
I'm now sober, Peter.
Peter and I like to warm up a little bit before we actually get into doing the podcast. We discuss like some broad, like, let's make sure we touch on this, touch on that. And it also just kind of catching up with each other warms up the podcasting muscles. And we both regaled each other with stories of how trying to live life like we did 10 years ago is a terrible idea.
My story, at least, I drank way too much tequila and had to pay the iron price. Yours is just a sad story about being an old man.
Yeah, I just was up until 2 o'clock in the morning.
2 o'clock in the morning.
And it ruined my whole Saturday. Like, legit, my whole Saturday was dominated by the fact I was just exhausted by everything because I didn't get enough sleep.
Joe,
it's just...
I'm going to give you some advice right now. Don't ever have kids.
You know what? Okay.
You will not
Only
survive.
because you told me not to, though. Yeah. Like,
if staying up till 2 in the morning playing Magic is too much for you, make sure you keep that pull-out game real strong with the misses.
Yeah, it's pretty definite over here with that. I'll leave you to be creating the next generation of nerds. I'm happy to be a genetic dead end. And you know what's not a dead end, or so I've heard?
Them Star Trek franchise movies.
Yeah. I'm fairly ignorant to this, so why don't you explain the news?
So I saw, and little discussions like this always date our podcast because anybody listening to it 2 years from now is gonna be like, well, yeah, obviously they made those movies, but I think it's good to have our opinions on record. So there was a confirmation. So there has been some sort of consolidation, as I understand it, between CBS, Viacom, and Paramount. And now all of the intellectual property is under the same stewardship, which allows them to start touching other properties and get the wheels turning again. And
I should point out that the reason those mergers happened, the primary driver was the mess that was Star Trek rights. Like, that was the main reason they decided to do this. So it's not a surprise to me that they sorted it out quickly.
It's crazy, too, because, when they showed the Enterprise in season 2 of Discovery, it looked a little different. You still knew it was a Star Trek Enterprise, right? It still had a saucer section and a secondary hull and the 2 warp nacelles, but there's always something different between all these movies. And I thought it was just, it's an earlier version of the ship and they wanted to make it look different or whatever. And that's not the case. It's that because different entities were making products that they didn't hold the original rights to, they'd always have to change it enough that it wasn't an exact copy because of copyright.
That is correct.
It's crazy. It's a fucking Enterprise. Like, what the hell? So anyways, they got all their ducks in a row now. And the CBS network, or I'm sorry, the movie head said, yeah, we got 2 new Star Trek movies that are confirmed to be moving forward for filming. And they don't have hard confirmations on what they are yet. But the rumor is that the first one's going to be another entry into the Kelvin universe. We got Chris Pine as Kirk confirmed, although it's still up in the air. I think if Chris Hemsworth is going to be involved as George Kirk, his father, which I think would be pretty cool. And then the second one is the interesting one, and that is going to be most likely the Quentin Tarantino movie.
I want to start with actually the less interesting one, which the Chris Pine as Kirk one, the Kelvin verse. Yeah. I was obviously super cold on that because of how awful Into Darkness was, but finally coming around to it after watching Beyond, which was surprisingly good. I'm in for that, particularly because a movie that allowed that version of Kirk to deal with his past and his father in particular would be a nice bow on that. Like, story-wise would make a lot of sense. And I feel like they really did a lot to redeem the direction they were going in with Beyond. And so I think depending on the creatives behind it, like if they give it to J.J. Abrams again, just flush it down the toilet. But, anybody else gets their hands on it that loves Star Trek, they tend to turn in quality work. So, you know, if the Fast and the Furious guy can do it, anybody can. So that's my thoughts on that. I know you're more of a fan of the Kelvin verse. I considered it dead to me, and then I finally was like, well, I'm a completionist, and I turned on Beyond. I'm like, oh, holy shit, that was awesome.
I like action. Action goes well, especially in the TOS environment. And, you know, I've said it before and I'll say it again. We know the characters' history. We know their stories. We've explored it in depth in the original series TV show and the original series the Shatner movies. So I don't need to retread old ground. And I'm fine with having a bright and shiny and lens reflective or lens flared chase sequence with doing cool transporter tricks and high action sequences. Like, it works for me. It didn't take away any of the stuff I already knew, and it's just adding more stuff. And I get it's not everybody's cup of tea, but what I'm excited.
I should say that I like that stuff too. The stuff I didn't like about it was that they sacrificed the soul of Trek. I think a little too much, particularly like in in Into Darkness, where it's just like, what is this mess? And Star Trek being exciting isn't bad, and I felt like I finally hit the right kind of balance with Beyond. So, but go ahead.
What I'm excited about is the Quentin Tarantino Trek. Did you get a chance to watch Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
I haven't. I've seen every other Tarantino movie. I certainly will watch that one. I probably will wait till it comes to streaming somewhere, to be honest with you. I'm just kind of that mode, but I will eagerly watch it once it is. I'm actually really in for that. Like, Quentin Tarantino's never made a bad movie.
I'd have to look at the list. He's got some strong entries. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was way too long. I think somewhere in there was a good movie. There's like a good half-hour movie, but it was like almost 3 hours. It was just too fucking long, and I couldn't identify with any of the subject material. I could sit there and watch it until it was well filmed, but just these long takes and like watching 4 minutes of Brad Pitt make his dog food, like, what? But then my father-in-law saw it and my dad saw it, who both grew up in the era that the movie was set in, and they just can't say enough good things about it. And I get it. When he gets into a subject material that he understands, his attention to detail is phenomenal. And I think that if he can make a Star Trek movie where he cares about what he's doing, and I care about the story he's telling, that it's really going to be something terrific.
Yeah, same. I think that's my attitude, is that if this is something he wants to do because he really is like, I love Star Trek and I have this great idea and I want to do this, then I'm 100% in, whatever it is, because it's going to be crafted with a kind of attention to detail and care that no other filmmaker is going to be able to do.
Give me a 15-minute scene of two guys sitting around 10 forward talking, and I can see what the rest of the crew is getting into and tables behind them, and just meandering around set pieces for that long and chewing on the scenery. Like, I can get really, really excited about that.
Same. Like, and he's the kind of guy who can deliver on the lived life of, the Federation / Alpha Quadrant / Star Trek people that no one else could. I don't know what his idea is. I know, there's some people who are like, he's just too much. It's just going to be guys, dropping F-bombs all over the place. I don't have any idea what his idea might be, but I will say that I have enjoyed every movie he's ever made, and every movie he has ever made is extremely well done, well crafted, and has an attention to detail that other filmmakers couldn't possibly ever touch. And therefore, whatever he creates, I will absolutely give it a chance.
Here's my dream. I want him to make this Star Trek movie. I don't want established characters anywhere near this thing. I want him to make a bank heist or some sort of like criminal adventure about people who have nothing to do with Starfleet and are barely Federation citizens, and just give me Pulp Fiction in space with a little bit of Starfleet sprinkled in, and the guys are fucking with the Klingons and they're pissed off, and a Romulan femme fatale, and just schlock it up, because Star Trek is a place where you can tell whatever story you want. It doesn't always have to be the captain of the Enterprise standing on the bridge of the Enterprise saving the world. give me something between the lines. Give me a little people story.
You know what I was hoping for? Crimson Tide, except Starfleet. That's what I was hoping. Like maybe his idea was like, give me that kind of like submarine stalking. There's all these stakes about the fate of the Alpha Quadrant based on like what the captain does, and maybe the first officer disagrees, and there's tension.
So you want a super serious movie?
Yeah, I'll take what you're saying either. Like, I'm happy with schlock too. I think Trek is, sometimes can be overly serious, and it would be fun to see somebody kind of go in a fun schlocky direction with it that's also like feels authentic, especially if it's done in that like 60s vibe.
Oh God. But could you imagine if he does a movie with like TV show original uniforms and set pieces? Like how fucking rad that would be.
If he does what you're talking about, that's exactly what the fuck he's gonna do. Are you shitting me? That's like that is 100% what he would do.
I keep
There's
saying,
no doubt.
I like the slice of life episodes that we see in Voyager with what's life in the Federation like? What's life like when, it's downtime? Show me the bigger picture of Earth. Show me the Federation. Show me stuff that's not the Starfleet bridge. And I think that's where he would really excel at just fleshing out the environment and showing, what do people get up to in the post-scarcity society of the Federation? Like, I'm excited for it. And even if it's terrible, Star Trek's put enough terrible movies out there that I've watched anyways that, life goes on, and you take the cool stuff. You take Riker flying through the briar patch with a CH flight stick, and you're like, whatever. Okay. I know it's there now. Good. Cool. Next.
Oh God, that's got to be TNG's lowest moment, right?
I don't know that. Episode 3 where they go to like the Black Planet, and then Tasha Yar has to get in the gladiatorial match with, and it's like super racist. That's a low one, man.
That's also true. Okay, well, before we go any deeper on that, what episode of Star Trek Voyager did we watch this week?
We watched season 4, episode 20. Was that Vis-a-Vis?
Vis-a-vis.
Face to face.
So you guessed last week that it was going to be a like infidelity episode, which I teased, of course, it was not, and now you know what I meant. What I forgot about this episode is that how classic Voyager it was, which is what a really cool idea that they just don't actually manage to kind of put together at the end. I was struck by something what we were talking about when we were doing the Killing Game Part 2, which is this didn't need to be 2 parts. Why is this 2 parts? There's so many other episodes of the show that we've watched that would have been much better as 2 episodes.
If not 3 episodes.
There's so much meat on this bone, like, and you're just trying to wrap it up at the end, and you just kind of squander it. Like, why this episode with the holodeck and the Hirogen and the Nazis is the one that we're going to make 2-parters because the spectacle, And here we are the next week. And it's like the first 30 minutes of this episode is all this setup. You get all this kind of suggestion of what's going on. They finally hit you over halfway with the actual plot, and then they just don't have enough time at the end to do anything, and it's just kind of over. And it's like, why the fuck wasn't this the 2-parter? That'd have been so cool. Like, this needed to be a 2-parter where the stinger at the end was the body swap.
Yeah.
I
want to jump back to Killing Game. The 2-parter that I think they should have made there, because I thought about that episode some more. I think they could have wrapped the entire Hirogen plot line up in 1 episode. I think if they were going to keep it as a 2-parter, or maybe what they should have had between Killing Game 2 and Vis-a-Vis was an episode about how the fuck do you put the ship back together when you have gutted the majority of the saucer section and turned it into a fucking holodeck. Like, talk about leaving Voyager in a situation where its pants are pulled down and it needs like drastic repairs. Like, I want to see that story. But
yeah, like as a sort of soft 2-parter is what you're saying. I mean, if like it's a continuation of the prior week, but it's not like a direct continuation of that story. It's the consequences.
Yeah, and then throw in a new monster of the week or something else that normally wouldn't be a big deal if it wasn't for the fact that Voyager was still all fucked up. Instead, we begin Vis-a-Vis like every other Voyager sin. We're reset back to homeostasis. Everything is fine. The ship looks great. We never heard about any dead crew members from the Hirogen occupation, and that's that. I'll get into my big thoughts about this episode later, but top down, I really, really like this episode a lot. We were just talking about slice of life stuff. I think this is a good example of that. I think it's been a long time since we've had some quality Tom Paris character development, and especially after the bad taste that Killing Game left in my mouth and the one before it, like, this felt like a good return to solid Voyager storytelling. But now that I hear you talking about it, I do agree that the pacing was a little weird.
Yeah, it feels like they front loaded a lot, and it included the things that you're talking about, which were well handled. I just feel like the plot at the end, they set up all this stuff and all these unanswered questions about who this guy is, how he did what he did, the potential of them telling more in-depth story about Tom having to deal with being in the situation he's in and fake Tom doing what he's doing. They just did just enough to finish the episode, and there was so much more meat on that bone that they could have done.
So they start us off
particularly in service to what you liked, which was the slice of life stuff and watching like the day to day and how the fake Tom might have dealt with that. But anyway, continue.
They start off with an old 1960 something Camaro, and you got Paris underneath it working on it. And this is a return to a character trait that we have only encountered once for Tom Paris, and that is that he likes 20th century automobiles, which we found out in the stupid 37s when they found the truck floating in space looking whack as fuck. But it's a really cool
piece of clip art. Yeah.
This is a really cool setup. As is so often the case, I feel like the best parts of the Voyager episodes live before the credits, and I don't think this is any exception. So Tom's got this holodeck simulation, and it's so quaint. I love it. And it might seem like, well, that's stupid. Why is he working on a car? He could just summon up a regular car that already works and be buzzing around on a speed track. But then, look at the Steam library out there, the Steam video game library. How many farming sim games and mechanic and build your own computer sim games and stuff that doesn't really appeal to me, but like there's just something therapeutic about it that clearly he's tapped into. And it's a neat use, an idea of, building this car up, restoring it, even though it's just software. And you could, say, what, computer, fix that carburetor after all. I don't feel like putting the 5 hours into fixing it. And he's in there just cranking around. When the doctor just materializes into the simulation and lays on the car horn and scares Tom. And instantly my first thought is, how the fuck does the doctor know where the horn is?
I guess maybe he might have learned because he was part of all the car-related shenanigans in the Future's End episodes.
You're
after
right.
He got his mobile emitter.
You're right.
Yeah.
I stand corrected. He watched corporate jabroni, kidnap him. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and then he got counter-kidnapped by Sarah Silverman, and he was in the car. He knows what cars are.
There's some very juicy info that gets dropped here. They still have not pulled their head out of their asses and figured out that they need more than the ship's pilot to be able to fill in as a nurse and, grab one of the Delaney sisters or someone else sitting around their thumb up their ass.
Right.
And that Tom is still the only other medical person other than doctor, especially in the light of Message in a Bottle, where they stood a very good chance of losing the doctor forever, and Tom was forced with the reality that he is the only other medic-capable person. But Tom's been screwing off and not following his education plan to become a better medical practitioner, and he drops a little nugget saying that they haven't been dealing with anything worse than an in-ground toenail for several weeks. And in the world of Voyager, man, that is an unprecedented amount of time to be flying through space without any sort of serious injury, medical emergency, or, terrible invasion.
I was about to say, they must have had a really quiet month, because that's unheard of for this ship. Particularly after, I imagine Tom was probably pulling like triple duty while he was helping patch together all of his comrades after the goddamn Hirogen thing.
Dude.
Like, his attitude about this is pretty indefensible. I will say I like the program. I like the idea of he has a hobby of doing this and it's therapeutic, and the whole idea of the Steam games and doing these things like playing a flight simulator or that sort of thing where it's not like the most taxing, but it allows you to sort of explore this creative, I want to accomplish this thing because it seems interesting impulse. Also provides that sort of clear relationship parallel to the real world where he has his, you know, his man cave that he gets away from his girlfriend in, you know,
Yeah.
that's why they did it. But yeah, like Tom not giving a fuck about this is not defensible, but I guess that's the point, right? Like, he's clearly checked out on his life a little bit, and while he's not like being a rebel and purposefully like fucking it up, he's also not putting any effort into anything.
Bitch, and that's going to be the theme for pretty much this entire episode, is Tom's acting like a real bitch. There's one other thing I want to touch on in this holodeck scene. It's something that I've never really given any thought to before, and it's the idea of physical possession and ownership of a good that exists only in the holodeck. I've always considered the holodeck a very disposable experience, and the main thrust of the holodeck is an experience, right? You're going in there to play a game or to do training or a simulation or something. It's not about the stuff you're touching. It's about the experience of moving around and interacting with these holographic characters. But it's like, what he's got with this car is it is a physical possession that he covets. It only exists on the holodeck, but he shows that it's good enough. Like, if you've always wanted a Rolex watch, yeah, sure, you could replicate one, you know, one of the ship's replicators, or instead of, you know, using your rations, you could go on the holodeck and just have this watch on you. And I think for a materialistic society like us, like that's a pretty, I think that'd be pretty common to see in people like you and me. Like, man, you know, I've always wanted, I don't know, a gold crown or whatever. And in his case, especially, like, it's not feasible to have a car on the ship, but he's got this persistent program. That car is his. He has fixed it. He feels like he has a strong degree of investment in it. And that's, I think, at the end of the scene when he brings BElanna in there and shows it off, it's like, this is a real thing to him. Even though it quits existing as soon as he walks off of there, like, it's as real to him now as it is anything that's inside his quarters.
It's just as real as the guy who grinded in World of Warcraft to get the fucking hammer that opened the gates of AQ40 so he could have the special
Yeah, that
mount.
was the guy's name was what? Carr?
I forget the guy's name.
Oh, you said World of Warcraft. I thought you meant World War II. I was making a Hirogen joke, Joe. Come on, goddammit.
Oh. No, I mean, that was what I thought it is that it's like a guy whose World of Warcraft account has a lot of these achievements on it. And, you know, that is something he invested his time in and accomplished something difficult to do. And it's very that accomplishment is real, even if the good is not physical.
It was a
which
really cool,
totally.
It was a really cool use of making me look at the holodeck a new way and the things on the holodeck a new way. So I thought it was a really good intro. In the end, you know, Tom's like, yeah, okay, I promise I'll be around more. And the doctor takes it as good enough. And then right before Tom can go back to work on it, he gets summoned up to the bridge.
So he goes to the bridge in his like mechanic outfit, which is nice touch, because he reports immediately as requested.
But there's grease on his face. And that's... If you're getting dirty,
yeah, that is weird. Like, yeah, you're
because
right.
I'm like, how cool
weird.
would it be to like do something really messy, like you know, cooking with a lot of oil, or you know, dealing with sausage, which I hate cooking with sausage. It just dries on your skin. It's so gross. And like, or repairing a car and you got grease all over your hands until you just walk off the holodeck and you're perfectly clean now. It's like Last Action Hero with Schwarzenegger when he falls in the tar pit and the next scene he's wiping off with like a little wet nap and he's perfectly clean again.
In any case, for whatever reason he has grease on him, he has grease on him. And he reports to his station, and they are encountering a ship that is powered by something called a coaxial warp drive. that they explain is a theoretical type of warp drive that folds space in a very exactly like Event Horizon sort of way. That's what I took it as. And that it's something that Starfleet warp mechanics have theorized.
This warp technology of Event Horizon is real because Event Horizon has happened. We got Voyager footage of it happening. There's
That's
continuity.
true. We have a direct link. Like, it's not even controversial at this point. That was clearly early warp testing or something. But in any case, Tom manages to MacGyver a way to prevent this guy's ship from blowing up, which he promptly does and is successful. And a very, shall we say, grateful alien face that has a tiny extra nose on its forehead hits the view screen and says, "Hey, thanks so much. Really appreciate your help," and is very friendly. And of course, Captain Janeway always eager to make friends with strange aliens with a potential technological benefit for them. Says, "Hey, what's going on? Maybe we can help you out." And he's happy to receive the assistance.
How did you feel about Tom in the flash of in the blink of an eye being a warp theory specialist?
It made sense for the fact that he's really like into engines, like that he as the driver, like if he's going to have a speciality in engineering at all, it's going to be in how warp fields work, because it's important to his job. So like, I like the idea of like, yeah, I actually like did enjoy learning this because it was relevant to what I wanted my career to be, maintaining a warp field for a living.
There's two big complaints I had about this episode, and his sudden development that, in an instant, he now has warp engine repair skill on par with Harry Kim and BElanna Torres, and it just seems to have sprung out of nowhere. Like,
no. He worked on that Warp 10 engine, before he put alien babies in his captain.
And that's the only saving grace to this thread. I mean, if there's enough mileage in the 37s to bring up his love of cars again, yes, he did go transwarp. Not that they would ever admit it in the rest of this fucking series, but it still seemed real weird for him to pull all that knowledge out of his ass. I did like that there were two courses of action on the table for Janeway. One was try and hang around with this highly unstable and fringe science vessel and maybe save them, or stick around, and when this thing blows up, it's going to destroy all space in a billion
10 billion kilometers.
Yeah. And Janeway's like, what? A chance to blow up the ship? Drop anchor, boys. We're in this for the long haul.
Go ahead, Tom. Give it your best shot. If not, finally get my wish. Self-annihilation. So this guy's name's Steph, which threw me off the first couple times for some reason. And he is just like Mr. A. He's like the Fonz, man. He is just like, he's a cool dude.
Minus the way he dresses, which is like a complete and utter fucking 70s sci-fi goon. He's got this red, he looks like Mork and Mindy, man. He's got this red velvet jumpsuit with a belt and his second nose on his forehead. And it's like, this is the best you could do. This guy, it's weird to see an alien actor that can portray this much charisma on screen and to dress him in this fucking travesty. Wow. That's my third complaint for this episode. He agrees, he welcomes the idea of some help. And then we get the scene with Tom and Checotah. And I was expecting it to be bad, and I was hoping it would be great, because at this point, Checotah and Tom have had some real shared experiences.
Oh, yeah. Going all the way back to the fucking pilot.
Yeah.
And
I guess the biggest thing I think of when I think about their bonding experience would have been the series of events that happened on Anorak's time ship in Year of Hell, since they spent a fucking year together over there.
Basically, yeah.
But as you are always quick to point out, the the sin of that episode is that it was ultimately a bottle episode and nobody got to retain any information or knowledge of that. So all that character development between them is completely in the trash. But you got Tom coming in and asking Chakotay, hey, can I go over to Steph? Up front, he's like, I need a change of pace, and I think this would be really good, and I'm interested in this, and it'd be great. And then Tom's like, yeah, but, you know, the doctor fucking ratted you out, and we've got concerns about you, Tom. You just haven't been acting like yourself. You're showing up for shifts on time. Like, it reminded me of that scene from Office Space where Jennifer Aniston gets yelled at about her boss.
Yeah, because the minimum amount of flare.
Yeah, she's like, well, how many pieces of flare do I need for you to be happy? And he's like, it's not about meeting the minimum number of flare. You need to be into this. And I was like, man, Chakotay, what a dick. What a fucking dick. They end up connecting more than I was expecting them to. It wasn't as much as it could have been, and I think as much as it would have deserved, to finally see how these guys are getting along, 4 years after Tom laid some Native American shape-shifting jokes on him or whatever, saying he should turn into a hawk and fly away from the OSHA disaster bridge. But by the end, Chakotay's like, you know what? Screw the doctor. I want you to go over to that ship and help that guy out. And you've really made a lot of great changes. You're coming along as a person wonderfully, and I got your back on this.
Yeah, it's nice to have the recognition that Tom has evolved, and
which is very rare for Voyager to acknowledge.
Yeah, rare for them to actually like dive in a little bit on their characters changing, and Tom is probably the one that's changed the most. But yeah, I feel like Chakotay in particular, even when you take Year of Hell out of the equation, owes Tom a lot, and I feel like he doesn't. There should be more respect there. He still kind of lords it over him, even though like Tom has clearly like gone the extra mile specifically for him in the past.
Yeah.
And instead of being like, hey man, let's have a man-to-man talk. Like, what do you need to like feel better about what's going on in the ship? Like, I'm concerned. Like, I owe you a lot, instead of, it's your boss doing you a favor. It's like, I really feel like at this point, Chakotay owes Tom a little bit more than that, just on a personal level, because they're both outsiders. They're
both terrorists.
They're both ex-terrorists. They've both
Federation defectors.
They've both come a long way since being on the ship. Like, Chakotay's found his footing as the second in command of the vessel. Tom has reinvented his whole life, and never do I feel like Chakotay treats Tom more as like an equal and always as a subordinate, which the two of them specifically should probably have a different dynamic in private.
Also, too, all the Seska stuff, like they specifically engineered this very cold relationship with Tom subverting Chakotay and like ramping up the bad boy Tom persona so he could fly off and get kidnapped by Seska. Like, having done that intentionally and seeing the impact it had on the crew, I would have thought that they would have tried extra hard to like make sure everything was copacetic between them. But I'm going to lay the problem in this scene on Tom. Like, yeah, Chakotay might have been able to push harder, but Chakotay asked him like 3 times, like, hey, dude, what's up? We care about you. And back to the overarching theme of this episode is Tom's just acting like a fucking bitch. Even with the door shut and in there with a guy he's asking for a favor, he says like, I want to change a pace, but he can't articulate what his problem is and just come clean on it.
Well, he might not know. That's actually kind of realistic. Like, a lot of times people don't know, like, why the fuck they feel the way they feel.
Fair.
When they're kind of fucked up, right? And so that he's like, I just need a change. I just need to I know what's annoying me. I know that I would like to be away from it, and that may be all I understand.
Yeah.
I got it. I got it.
I want to lay my biggest gripe out on the floor here about this episode. And this has a strong parallel to False Prophets. And the Skeevian episode, right? Now there is a fantastic technology that has just fallen into Voyager's lap. This event horizon site-to-site warping, right? Space folding with this coaxial warp drive dropped right in their lap. And there's no fucking talk whatsoever about like, holy shit, this is an easy ticket home. Get all of our engineers over there, fix this fucking shit up. and let's co-opt this technology and get it going. Like, there's a little bit of discussion, like maybe we could, but like people like thirsty ass fools like Harry Kim, they're always like, mommy, daddy, I miss you. Like, why is everybody not shitting their fucking pants when this ship just pops in and it's like, oh, hey, look, I'm friendly. Can you send over engineers and help me? Like, why is everybody not like, this is the fucking ticket home, boys. Get over there and let's do this right. We botched it on the Skeevian super transport. Now we got a chance to get this thing hooked up. Do it. Janeway
especially because the guy's like wide open and is like,
hell yeah,
yo, yeah, go ahead. Yeah. It also does not make sense to me. And like the fact that they address it by saying like, hey, maybe you can like, hey, Tom, when you got extra time, maybe you can put that shit on a shuttle. Let's give it a try, right?
No, Tom, you are no longer the pilot. Nobody has, and take all the work crews that were in circulation for Hirogen, and that is going to be the ship again right now, and everybody is going to be working 100% on getting this folding technology working on the ship. Instead, their treatment through this episode is right about on par with, saving a whole planet full of Talaxians. They try for about 5 minutes. Wasn't meant to be. Whatevs.
Yeah, it just didn't quite work out, guys. All right, let's go home.
So Tom gets permission to go over there. The interior of the ship. And I want to point out, too, there's going to be 2 new ships that we see this episode. One is this little, whatever the fuck it is, ship. And then there's some, what the hell's their name? Banthan ships we're going to see later on that look fucking sweet.
They're fucking rad, yeah. Like, you see them for 2 goddamn seconds, and they're like, "Oh, holy shit! Who the fuck are these people?"
Those are some of the coolest ships. Easily the coolest ships I've seen in Voyager. After maybe Voyager itself, like, what a fucking waste of badass models. But they get over there. It's a big bridge area. It's a nice set piece. We meet Steth, who is still dressed in his terrible leisure suit of velvet, red velvet. And he starts getting along real well with Tom.
Yeah, they have a real like buddy relationship. They're shooting the shit about, he's this job that he says he's got of being a test pilot, and just he doesn't like to put roots down. He's just kind of out there. And Tom's like talking about how he really likes his life and responsibilities, but is clearly like has that, does he though, feel to it? And the tease that they start giving you, starting with this scene, is that there's something clearly off about Steph. He seems to be like changing into a lady that is clearly a different alien race.
I'm going to tell you something, Joe, that I've never, ever said in my life.
Oh, okay.
Boy, that was a good-looking morph effect in that Star Trek episode. I was stunned because like it's this pain. He's like, and like he starts like his face starts bubbling around, and like he looks like a chick, and then he's like looking like nose guy again, and it's just going back and forth in his hands, and I'm like, am I watching Star Trek? Why does this look legit as fuck? What is happening here? But
it was really well done. You're right.
Great. And yeah, so something's up with this guy. We don't know what his deal is. But there's a lot of dialogue between him and Tom where, exactly like you said, Steth is bragging, humble bragging, like, oh, my life's so chaotic and there's all this stuff. And you can tell that Tom's like, I want that life. And it's easy to see how good Steth is at manipulating the situation, where he's like, oh man, you're right. You do have it so good here. And just rubbing Tom's face in it real subtly. And all he's doing is getting Tom wound up and even more pissy about whatever his problem with life on Voyager was. Ultimately, he's like, I'm going to go do this other test thing over here. You should come with me. We can meet back up with Voyager when it's done. Just going to throw that out there. Think about it. And he puts the bait out.
We get a scene between Tom and BElanna that is among my favorite, because it is just a kind of normal pissy fight. We talk about how these two sometimes seem to have chemistry and then sometimes feel like they have all the chemical reaction of helium. But that was a chemistry joke.
Joe, I'm not good at chemistry. Does that mean that there's a good chemical reaction or no?
I hate you. Thanks for shitting all over that.
I'm going to use the context.
My noble gas joke. Yeah,
I'm going to use the context clue and know that since you're talking about Tom and BElanna, it's bad chemistry.
But this scene works because it's like Tom being pissy and unreasonable, and BElanna being like, "Why the fuck are you being so unreasonable?" Like that is something that happens in a lot of people's relationships.
And this is Tom the human, who's usually, you know, like, don't be defensive, you're putting your shields up, and BElanna's like, I want to get mad and rip telephone books in half and throw cups at people, and like she's just chill as fuck through the whole thing, and Tom is just acting like a mega bitch, and that's real relation stuff, man. Roles reverse. I
liked how she ends it, of like he starts being pissy again, and she just goes, "Good night, Tom," and leaves.
Yeah,
like,
and when you're
perfect.
When your Klingon girlfriend is turning the other cheek and you can't, that's a real problem in your court. He was late to their dinner date because he was spending too much time BSing with Steph over on the ship. So by the time he gets there, she's already done eating, and she's like justifiably pissed and is just like, "Hey, you know, what's going on?" Trying to be reasonable and talk about this. And this is where Tom really goes into like super bitch status in this episode, because he's been using this garage where he's restoring this Camaro as like his escape leisure activity, right? And that combined with this magical knowledge of warp drives that I never knew he had, like, what a good synergy and bonding experience for him and BElanna to have. Like, what a dick move that you're going to be in there doing super mechanical stuff, working on a fucking car. You know, this
cool not bringing stuff. Your like hot rod engineer girlfriend.
Yeah, like what the fuck, man? Like, if there's one person on the ship who should be able to appreciate archaic old tech like that, it should be her. But like, just a fucking shitty dick move. I think BElanna should have been a lot more active in this episode as an engineer, and less as just like a pissed off lover. But whatever.
I mean, you had to focus on this being a Tom episode, and I get why. The next bit of interaction between him and Steph is that they go to the holodeck program, and he like talks about how he figured out a way to make Steph's coaxial warp drive more stable using the idea of a carburetor and what a carburetor does in a 20th century engine, and they need to build a similar type of device for this kind of ship and this kind of engine so that the way it fuels itself won't cause its instability. And this is where we see a lot more of the whole Steph's like whatever's going on with that morphing and turning into this lady is happening. There was like a check that he did on the ship where like he only had like a few hours left before he was going to revert into this form. We still don't know much about it or why it's happening.
I mean, to any experienced Star Trek viewer or sci-fi fan out there, it's plain as day that this is some sort of body jumping parasite thief thing. I think
they haven't established if he's villainous or yet. Like that's the thing they hadn't like put out there yet. Like they do a good job of hiding that he's villainous until like 2/3 of the way through the episode. So you like kind of like him, right? Like he's clearly got something going on, and it might be tragic. You know, it's not clearly he's a bad guy yet.
I knew it was up. There's never been a pod person body snatcher that was good. I want to say the last time we saw it in Voyager specifically was the Warlord from Cat's sexy vampire kitty cat episode.
Yes.
Which also had dudes with extra nose tubes on their face. And I was like, sweet, are we going to get to see more blood shooting out of nose tubes? Like, I'm very excited. And all the more reason why some of the behavior later on in the cruise, like, or why there should always be an expectation, like, Tom's not acting right. Is he being infiltrated by an alien influencer? Quick, get him in the med lab now. Like, when Janeway orders him to go to the sick bay, it's like, yeah, it's about fucking time. Dick move on Tom's end, showing Steph his little secret man cave toy before his girlfriend, his mechanic hot rod girlfriend. Super right. Dick move. And once they wrap up, he's like, all right, I'll meet you back on the ship. Steph takes off, and Tom's cleaning up his shop, which I don't want to go back to how cool this little holodeck workshop is. Like, imagine being able to make a mess and not have to clean it up. Like, he starts trying to rearrange things. Like, okay, computer, revert back to clean state. Like, I would cheat like a motherfucker on that. But it seems like there's one tool he can't find, and he just doesn't know where. And instead of asking the computer where it went, like I would do, he turns the other cheek. I have to assume that these tools he's using, because this is going to be a big plot point later on, have to be like tools that mean something to him, and he actually replicated them and brings them with him onto the holodeck. Because again, if that was a holodeck,
seems like that way, yeah. It has to be because it was removed from the holodeck.
Yeah, but so is that grease. So unless he's like pre-greasing his face up as like part of his cosplay for being a mechanic, they play a little fast and loose with the rules in this one. But I see the writing on the wall. I know this is a body jumper episode now. I know that Steph's too cool to be legit, and there's a reason he's dressing like a fucking asshole. It's because he probably is a fucking asshole.
Turns out that's true, because what happens is they get the ship fixed. Steph, like, we get the 1/7 of 9 scene, like when he's like stealing computer records about Tom. It's part of like the danger of like maybe he's a bad guy, and then they go back to the ship, and Tom's helping him wrap up the repairs. Yeah,
I love that of all of his dumb luck, he chooses to go in the fucking cargo bay where the Borg Terminatrix is living.
Yeah, right. Like, whoops.
I love him skeeving his way out of getting reported by her. Like, way to play off of her native. Like, she's always so perfect in a lot of ways, but like against a smooth talker, he fucking schools her and acts, not acts, but like, lies circles around her and gets off the hook. And I also liked him hacking the terminal to get access to this data. I'm like, what the fuck? We've got a guy just wandering the ship with full security clearance again, pulling up people's records. And I was about to call bullshit, but like him using his little tablet to like break the password on the LCAR system, that was fucking cool, man. Like, give me more of that.
Yeah, there was. It was like a neat alien detail. Yeah, I agree. But the payoff comes when they're back on the ship, and Steph tells Tom, "Oh yeah, I took your tool," because Tom finds the tool and was like, "Hey, I was looking for my socket wrench," and he's like, "Yeah, I had to take it because you handled it. It had your DNA on it, and that's how I found out we're compatible." And that's when he does the pod person body switch. And
what happened
basically
is my wife walks in right at the beginning of this scene. So when Steph like goes up and starts getting like real close, and she's like, "What's about to happen?" I'm about to be like, because I didn't know if maybe like, there was going to be a kiss or something, and, Steph was going to turn into his female form and like monologue or what, but it's just one dude pinning another dude up against the wall on some 90s TV that was not very, this isn't Discovery where we've got like same-sex on-screen kisses all over the place. Like, she's like, what's going on here? And I'm like, okay, here. Yeah, the strangling, the body swap pop, and everything else. I'm like, yeah, that was a real weird setup. And she's like, why didn't Tom just shove him the fuck off when he starts like bullying him back up against the corner? I'm like, I don't know, man. Who knows what Tom's really down for? I've seen some shit on this show. Tom probably swings both ways. Prison. All right, there's your answer.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, I was about to say, the man spent enough time locked up that bangers can't be choosers. You just got to go with what's there.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes male, female, undeterminate, asexual, strange space genders.
Sure.
The Milky Way galaxy can be a freaky place, as we've all seen.
Mm-hmm.
Side note, if you ever watch it, I highly recommend even just watching it independent of anything else. The Trials and Tribulations episode of DS9, which is the anniversary episode that they did. Remember we watched that crappy one where they redid Star Trek 6 and I was super bad. Yeah, the DS9 one is awesome. It's where they go back in time for the Trouble of Tribbles episode. And something they play up in the episode is that part of the 23rd century, everyone was super DTF. Because it was the quote unquote, the 60s, right? And straight up that it's like the sexiest time to be in the Federation. Yeah, and they like constantly comment and have situations where, oh my God, why the fuck are these people so horny?
I like it. Eventually we'll get to DS9, man. I'm looking forward to it. But yeah, so Steph gets all up in Tom's personal space, and I think Tom's like, well, wait a minute, dude. I'm not like, I know we've been hanging out, broing out, but like, don't bro rape me.
Yeah. Ho. Is that a wine cooler? No. Sorry, have you ever watched that old?
Absolutely. That's why I just brought it up. We'll link into the trauma support group so everybody else knows what we're talking about, and it's not just terrible things we're saying. Did you bring your GameCube? But turns out that Steth is also into choke daddy. It's been a while since we've seen some same-sex hot and steamy choking since whatever Random Thoughts was with Tuvok's terrible adventure. But once he goes hands-on with them, Steth becomes Tom and Tom becomes Steth. It's weird. We don't really get any science behind what's going on, but it's a pretty complete body jump. And there Tom is wearing the terrible crushed red velvet suit.
I guess what we call the payoff from this point forward is we get Face Off. You know, we've got the Nicolas Cage, John Travolta 90s action classic where one guy starts living the other guy's life. And it's a great movie. If you've never seen it, I highly recommend it. And this guy is now looks like Tom, so it goes back to Voyager after sending the other ship off, making it look like, oh, the other guy just Poochie went off to his home planet, and starts to try and live his life. And it's clearly he's a little different because he's just not giving a fuck. He does have a scene where he makes up with BElanna, where it's actually very close to a scene where John Travolta, who is at that time actually now Nicolas Cage's character, like seduces his quote unquote wife. And so it's like he comes up with this sort of way to charm his way back into BElanna's pants, where he's like, oh, I learned all this time that I need to be spending with you, baby. Let me caress your face and plant this passionless kiss on you.
Thought it was good.
It was the scene was neat. Like, you can kind of tell, like, the way this guy operates is that he takes people's bodies and then just kind of fucks around for a while and then like time to move on, and then steal someone else's body. They never, again, like you pointed out, tell you how all this shit works or really, like, quote unquote get to the bottom of it, but they give you enough in what he does. You're like, okay, I see what this guy's about. I see what he's doing.
I don't need the full science behind what's happening exactly. I think you understand the situation well enough that it's temporary and there's a need to rotate bodies. Again, like any other body parasite situation, like Warlord. I like that at his core, Steth is a manipulator, that he can see what people need to hear to get his way, and that he can deploy it successfully to a point where he's able to, like, con, Borg drones, essentially. The biggest plot hole in all of this is when he takes Tom's body, he shoots Tom and knocks him out. And it's like, why wouldn't you just fucking kill him? Like, he sends the ship back off to return, and the place where he sends the ship to go, there's trouble waiting. And I think he knows there's trouble waiting. He's locked down all the console codes, as we'll later find out. So the ship's magic warp drive is no longer functional. But it's like, why let Tom live? You're setting him up the bomb to get fucked anyways. Like, just kill him and close that plot hole. It's very, very sloppy plot writing from the writer room.
I get, like, the idea of, oh, I'm going to send this guy off so it, like, ties up all my loose ends, maybe, but, like, actually it allowed the guy to, like, it allowed Tom to fall, like, ass backwards into the exact one person that could help bail him out of the situation, which that's where I have my problems. Everything up to this point is cool to me. I thought it was a really neat episode. What bothers me is that, like, Tom gets, like, foisted into the situation with these super rad alien ships. We don't know anything about what's going on, but we never get to find out because immediately some other ship rolls up, and it turns out this female alien beams on, and this is the last person that got body swapped on. And so immediately Tom is able to become best friends with this person because it's like, hey, that just happened to me. Do you want to go fucking get the guy? And then that's it. Like, there's so much they could have done in this universe of Tom living, the imposter Tom living his life, and Tom having to deal with, what the fuck do I do? I'm in this alien body. I got to figure out what to, like, ingenuity, his way out of it.
You know what? Try
and track down Voyager.
I take back my misgivings on your thoughts that this should be a two-parter. If that's the story you're saying should have been told, and it's Tom alone on the other end of the galaxy having to claw his way back to Voyager, that would have been terrific. That
Yeah, especially with all of this stuff about how he's like obviously not appreciating his life very much.
yeah.
It's like, what a great
Yeah, what the
episode for
fuck,
him to
man?
like.
Like, you're gonna give me
Yeah.
2 fucking episodes of dudes in Nazi uniforms playing shoot 'em up, and then here's a really awesome Tom pulls his head out of his ass story arc, like, and you got like cool ships you made just for this episode, and like some really interesting characters on the other part of the galaxy. Like, what the fuck, man? And throughout all of this, there could have been a huge payoff of new tech to move us closer forward. It could have been a good meta plot episode. Like, what a huge squandered opportunity there. And instead, yeah, like you said, they dump Tom right in the lap of the only person who could possibly help him in this situation. Not only can this person force a situation where Steth gives their bodies back, but can also override the lockouts on her old ship and everything else. Like, ridiculous.
Yeah, and it's because they've run out of time, right? This is already like, 10 minutes to go. They got to wrap it up. So it's just Deus Ex Machina. Here it is. The last kind of cool thing they do is that Tom, fake Tom, like starts drinking on the job and is like reading Janeway's like fucking diary and shit.
Threatens to beat 7 of 9's ass, which I don't think would have worked out too well for him. Like, he really likes as much attention as he shows 7 of 9. I'm really surprised that like she wasn't his next body swap candidate. Like, that would have seemed the ideal way for me to go if I wanted to be a badass.
That's something they could have done if they had managed to make this a 2-parter. Like, he could start like, like fucked with the crew, took someone else over. Like, they could have gone so much deeper.
I'd be looking at Janeway's logs to see where exactly Kess is, because, like, my buddy was a body swapper too, and he said that Kess girl had some really sweet psychic abilities. I gotta find her.
They end up concluding this story by having fake Tom attacks Janeway. Janeway calls for the cops to come in and stun him, and we get a little bit more choking action, but this time it's male on female, so not as much fun, not as much choke daddy action. And the Stevie's laughing behind me at that.
When she calls for the cops and Tuvok and Pretty Boy roll in there and the door opens up and it's just Tom strangling the shit out of Janeway, I fucking laughed, dude. I was like, oh my god, I wasn't expecting that shit to happen. Like, that's all. And they just fucking gun him down. They shoot him, no fucks given, as though it was Tom and Janeway's lizard baby.
So they ship Tom to the sick bay, and the thing that is going to happen has happened, and that's not Tom.
I got
Janeway. You did?
I got faked out good because there was so little time left in the episode that I figured that, okay, they got him. There was going to be more story to Tom getting back in there, but they show up, right? Steth Tom and pre-Steth attractive space elf lady, they pop in and they're like, hey, listen, this is going to sound crazy, but that's not the real Tom. I'm the real Tom, and that guy's a body jumper. And then fucking Checotah standing, or, Janeway and Checotah are like, this seems like such a foreign concept to us. Let's feel out. And it's like, can't Tom just start rattling off like security codes, or like, this is going to sound like I'm crazy, but hey, remember I made a you can turn into a hawk joke, and Janeway, you picked me up on the prison pal, and here's 4 years of knowledge that we only know together. And so it's just like, I don't know how to prove it to you, but I'm Tom. And then Janeway's like, I got to go think about this. And Janeway's done so much stupid stuff in her past, and I'm just like, yeah, this is within her wheelhouse. Like, this is legit.
This is dumb enough for her to be doing, but
sure.
Actually, it's the body jumper's Janeway now. She goes to the shuttle, guns down 7 of 9 real quick, dumps her body out, and
again, prime time to steal a Borg super powerful Terminatrix. Like, why stay in Janeway?
They wind up having her try to get away in the modified shuttle. So now, after getting Chakotay's trust by pointing out their little, their little talk, supervisory talk earlier, beats feet after her, and they wind up just blowing up the carburetor off of fake Janeway's ship to be able to arrest her. And they don't tell you anything about how they fixed everything, but the episode wraps on them having fixed everything.
All she got to do is just choke him and she's back. It's choking's a two-way
so we just
street.
had all this big choke circle in sickbay. It's like the doctor just arranged everybody to start just throttling each other until DNA is where it's supposed to be.
It's not the worst thing that's ever happened.
He's touching his nipples while it happened, his hollow nipples.
It's just not the worst thing
while it's happening.
Tuvix died in there. Tuvix was executed. So some consensual choking is just fine. That's going to be the episode for the title for this one.
Consensual choking?
No, choking is a two-way street.
You did it. I like it.
I loved bitchy, evil Janeway. Her dialogue delivery on that shuttle where she's like, yeah, fuck you guys. I know you can't kill me. Otherwise, you're never going to get your bodies back. And hey, by the way, Tom, tell your girlfriend I said hi. Like Kate Mulgrew is on another level to me after watching what she could be like when she is the bad guy. I loved it, and I want more of that, Janeway.
I am so happy to hear you say that, and I'm not going to tell you why, because I don't want to spoil anything.
Well,
I'm super happy to hear that. And we'll leave it there.
It was wonderful, and I enjoyed it. So they get her back, like you said. They all get rounded up. Everybody gets choked back into their right body. Shame on Tuvok, who was also surprised by all of this, that he didn't notice that Janeway should have been wearing the wrong number of pips on her uniform, right? Because if they swapped bodies, like, yeah, they're both in red command uniforms, but like, shouldn't Tom have suddenly had captain's pips?
Who knows?
There's some continuity foolishness on this. Also, I believe at a certain point, like, Janeway actually makes a captain's log, even though she's been functioning as the body swapped Janeway. Like, whatever. It was a good fake. They cheated to make it happen, but they did fake me out. I appreciated it. And by the end, there's a solemn promise by the real Steph that they're going to backtrack everything that this body jumper has done and try to, like, give everybody their body back who deserved it. And that seemed like,
of course, Tom takes his hot rod girlfriend to his hot rod and, recommits to her, and therefore, by definition, everything else. It's a nice kind of conclusion to I think this might be my favorite episode as far as their relationship is concerned.
Yeah.
Because it's the most believable relationship, maturation kind of thing that they've done between the two of them. So
I thought he was going to be cool and be like, well, the reason I've been hiding here so much is that here's this car I really love, and because you're more important to me than it is, I'm giving it to you, my awesome hot rod mechanic girlfriend. And instead he's just like, no, this is my car. Let's make out in the garage. Like, dude, you're not even going to load up the fucking open highway and like drive down California to make out point with her. Like, you're just going to do it in the garage. Like, you dickhead. You fucking dick.
Oh, man. Well, what do we watch next week?
I'm not done with this shit, Joe.
What?
The shuttlecraft almost jumped. They have the technology to fold space. No one says fuck all about it at all. Does this ever come up again?
I was trying to end this episode before I had to tell you the answer to that, because I don't want to hurt you. There's been enough choking in this episode. I don't need to choke. I don't need to choke your hope.
So they don't?
If you insist, here, let me put my tender but powerful hands around this and tell you that this is never ever, for the rest of this entire show, mentioned for any reason ever again.
Tuvix, transwarp through threshold, and now this.
Yeah.
I mean, this is weak as shit potential right here, Joe.
Yeah.
This is a weak as shit award opportunity right here. This might be more egregious than False Prophets, where they fucking buffoon up their chance to fly through the fucking wormhole. Like, they have the technology. Tom is familiar with the technology. They installed it on the shuttle. Like, there's not even mention of any of this shit in the fucking Memory Alpha. What the fuck? How is this not the outrage that everybody shows on Tuvix or Threshold? This is clown shoes.
This is clown shoes. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
This is a badass episode. I thought it was going to be complete garbage by that capsule. I was very pleasantly surprised. This is one of the standout episodes, I think, for Voyager season 4 underneath Year of Hell. I'll have to go through and look at the list and see if there's any other real gems in there, but this was a great Tom episode. This is a good Tom and BElanna episode. And this is a cool shit happening and seeing stuff going around. I liked all the talk about like replicating golf clubs because they got a double date with Harry and his girlfriend on the holodeck to go play golf. Like, it's just fucking cool. I mean, it was good enough that I can ignore the acquisition of Event Horizon space folding technology, but whatever.
I think the last 12 minutes let it down, but I think there was so much more they could have done. But that speaks to how they set this up very well. And they just needed more time to do more with a really cool concept.
If they would have played the episode out, if they would have given us a story of Tom is stuck on the other end of the galaxy and has to get back to his ship on the other end of the galaxy, and maybe even a chance where he could just warp home or warp back to Voyager and makes the call yet again to dedicate himself to his friends, like that is a huge miss. There was a really good story out there that could have been added onto this, and instead we got 2 episodes of Herodians in fucking Nazi uniforms. Like, shame. To answer your question earlier, we're going to be moving into season 4, episode 21, the Omega Directive, and there is 7 of 9 standing in the shadows with some blue light across her eyes with some very heavy Morticia Addams vibes. Voyager sensors detect a rare particle theoretically capable of damaging subspace and nullifying warp travel. You remember this episode, Joe?
Very well.
Is this a good one?
It's kind of wacky, actually. I think maybe a little too. It's a little too much, but I don't think it's a bad one.
I read this.
That helps.
I read this capsule. Voyager sensors detect a rare warp drive theoretically capable of warping Voyager home, and discover it's in the fucking shuttle bay on the shuttle that they installed it on, and we know it works. Joe, this is the new thing. This is the new hair up my ass. I think I've got my weakest shit season 4 award right here.
Yeah, I mean, I think we need to take a closer look at some of the bullshit we put up with the first like 5 episodes of the season before you commit to that, because this was pretty good otherwise, but can't argue with that. But thanks so much to everybody that has stuck through yet another episode of Voyager Please, a Hateful Voyage through the Delta Quadrant. As always, we encourage people to join our Facebook group. It's the Voyager Please Trauma Support Group. It's pretty easy to find. It's closed only just because, we respect everyone's privacy to talk about Star Trek without the whole world saying. Mostly ours.
Mostly mine.
But please just ask to join. I'll be happily add you. And you can always email us if you have something you want to point out about an episode or something you want to ask and have us answer on the air. We'll be happy to. We are reachable at VoyagerPlease@gmail.com. And you can even tweet at us at VoyagerPlease. So never hesitate to reach out. We love hearing from our fans. And thanks again for listening. We'll see you next week.